I'd like to call the meeting to order. Notice the posting, and we have all board members present. It's a special board meeting, so I won't go through the roll, but everybody's here.
O'Reilly isn't here.
O'Reilly's not here. You may stand corrected. Brings us to new business, and the first on the agenda is the approval of the open enrollment applications, and for that I will turn to Ms. Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you remember, back to the May 14th board meeting, the board was able to act upon the majority of applications both into Baraboo as well as out to other districts. There were a few students that we were still waiting for cost estimates from, and that deadline was May 25th, so we weren't able to act on all of the applications then. So what you have before you tonight is the summary of those applicants that the board did not vote on May 14th. So on the side that looks like this, the columns on the left-hand side are the open enrollment applications in, and the columns on the right-hand side are the open enrollment applications out that you will need to approve at this time. I do want to point out that under open enrollment applications in, under the first grade, we have one student that we will need to place on a waiting list. At this point in time, it looks like we would be able to accept him, but my recommendation would be that we wait until the fall in terms of the number of students that transfer in and transfer out, just to make sure that we do have room for that particular student.
I move to approve the open enrollment applications as listed.
Second.
So Danny, we didn't have any that had excessive costs
Not
attached
coming
to them.
in. No.
Okay.
We have a few that have, or not going out, didn't have any that had excessive costs. We have a few coming in that have some pretty high costs, so we can certainly approve those students, and I feel comfortable that we would be able to meet their needs, but certainly their resident districts have the opportunity to deny their requests on their end because of the high costs associated with them. So.
How many students are you looking at for these high costs?
We only have 3 students that I would consider high costs that want to come into Baraboo. We don't have any going out that I would consider excessive costs.
So the resident district would have to pay those costs
To us.
That's why they get to deny those yet if they want to.
By law, they have to, don't they?
They can deny them based on excessive costs if they can show that to DPI that would be a burden on their district.
Danny, on here you got with an asterisk says.
Yep, the asterisks denote those districts that offer a virtual school.
So out of these 77 out, is a considerable amount of them on virtual school then? Like a big one's 32 to McFarland down there.
Yep. So, yep, on the back side there is a summary that shows both by grade level and well as districts that they are applying to. So, correct. So, for applications out, those that are asterisked are those districts that offer a virtual learning opportunity within their district. So you can see our biggest district for applying out is McFarland, and they do offer an online opportunity for their students. So.
Danny, I don't know, maybe I'm asking off the top of your head, and if you can't, you can just email us tomorrow. The number of those virtual schools last year versus this year, the number?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I would be happy to email that.
Yeah, why don't you do that? So I just like to know what that is.
Do that.
Okay, thank you.
Just off the top of my head, I would say that more virtual virtual school applications this year than we had last year.
And some of that was changing statute that more are able to do it now.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And remember, they can apply for the applications out, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they will act on
Mhm.
those. We really don't know until school starts.
Right.
Okay.
Again, to ask the naive question that I asked last time, can you give me a highlight difference between a virtual school and our e-school network?
Not much of a difference, to be honest. I mean, they're both online opportunities for students, whereas students that are applying to attend some of these virtual schools, obviously, you know, they're not they're still living within the boundaries of Baraboo. It's just they are completely online within those districts. Whereas for most of our students that take advantage of the e-school opportunity, it's more of a hybrid. We don't have maybe just one or two students that are completely doing online curriculum. Here in Baraboo, they would still take some traditional classes, either at the high school or the middle school, and then in addition add an online component. Whereas the students applying to these virtual schools, they are 100% online.
And their support is online, where we have in-person support here within the high school. Makes a big difference for kids. And if they drop out of those virtual schools, they're counted against us for dropout rates, because we're the resident district.
Are these school districts making the investment for the curriculum and the back support that goes with this, or are they buying a canned package from a?
Canned package.
It's just a canned package.
Huge
Oh, you want to open
marketing
up a virtual
program.
school?
Yep.
Here's the curriculum.
Here's
Collect
your
$1,500.
Here's your
remember-
computer, good luck.
Yeah.
But isn't it always the same program that they're running? Isn't there a Wisconsin virtual school program that they purchase? Or can they just go
can
out
offer
and
anything.
get anything?
A lot of them will purchase like Florida virtual school.
I think
modules.
McFarland is, Florida, and again, there's been some
Which we've used
things
too.
in the paper
Used
lately,
Florida.
which I won't talk about right now, but, and so, they're not like here where we're using our teachers or other teachers in Wisconsin school districts across the state. Do we have any teachers that are out of state, that are in our e-school network, or that we know?
Out of state
Not out of
teachers?
state that I'm
No,
aware of.
they're all within state, within the participating districts. And even if it's being taught by a teacher that's located in another district, we still provide support here from
Yes.
our high school in terms of monitoring. We also make the kids go through an orientation to make sure that it's a good fit for them. It's not a good fit for every student. So we want to make sure that they're successful before they jump into an online course.
So what's the cost to the district when say Portage just started their virtual school? I mean, I can clearly see the benefit. McFarland picked up 32 students, and how many thousands of dollars
I
per
wouldn't
pop?
get too hung up on the numbers here though, because remember, we talked about this 4 years ago when we started the eSchool Consortium.
I wasn't here though. I mean, so I don't remember the conversation.
So part of the conversation was, it's hard to measure how many kids we're keeping here with the hybrid program that we have. And we meet both ends of the spectrum, both with AP classes as well as credit recovery classes. And I think what you're gonna see is, we're expanding to the middle school, which is an underserved population so far. We haven't met their needs of some of the students there. And also we're trying to incorporate some of that into our summer school programming as well. So you can't measure the impact of all of it. I believe we have the best program. We have the
No,
best curriculum.
I'm not defending the McFarland way of going out and buying some Florida virtual package that you provide your students, but clearly I can see a shell game when I look at one.
Mhm.
And to me, they look like it's a cost-benefit rule. If we can pick up 32 students from Baraboo, they're picking up 30 students from just about everywhere around here. They're taking in millions and probably shelling out a good half of that back to the corporation or whoever they're buying this package from.
Right, a cheap laptop and.
Yeah, a cheap laptop and your
yeah.
licensing fee that equals, I mean, they know exactly what to charge. They're charging,
But-
they're just sucking the dollars out of the state coffers
Right.
and the funding of state schools.
But the key is how successful those students are with those
Well,
classes, and like I said.
apparently
our-
it's irrelevant, because if they drop out, it's a knock against us anyway.
Mhm.
That doesn't seem right.
You know?
No, it surely doesn't.
Well-
We've been saying that for quite a few years.
These are the applications. When it comes to the fall, though.
Right,
What-
we'll
what
actually
is-
know which students.
And we'll provide another update
I
to
know,
the
but just, I
board.
know it don't correlate, but
Yeah.
what is your, has it been 50% come here or more than that, or?
I would say, probably roughly between 75 to 85, or 75 to 80% of the applicants actually follow through with their choices. I do want to point out, however, that this year, our number of applications going out of Baraboo is significantly lower than it has been in previous years. We're probably, Trend Data has put our number of applicants out probably around 30 students more than what we saw this year. So I think that bodes well to the district in terms of meeting the needs of the students that we do have here in Baraboo. And I think we're thinking outside of the box for many of our students and not getting caught up in, you know, trying to fit students within a traditional model. And we're really looking at creative, either hybrid programs or things like that that we can do to keep students here in Baraboo. So.
Danny, have you looked at the data of the students who actually did leave through the years past? And are those students who may have benefited from a gifted program that we now have, you know, that students who were looking for advanced opportunities to progress at a faster speed, and so we don't have to be as concerned anymore, or as we move forward with our gifted, or have you seen a trend that these are students who were in the bottom third and may have dropped out had they stayed here? Is there a certain kind of student that goes to these that we've lost to virtual programs?
Sure. In the last 2 years that I have been here, Mo, the majority of students that I see applying to go out to Baraboo are
Out from Baraboo.
are our at-risk students.
Average students.
At-risk.
At-risk students.
And I would say particularly at the middle school level, that's where we lose kids. And so when we think about alternative programming, we really have to be focused on the needs of kids at that level.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that does say that. It does indicate that.
I'd just like to add on Sean's point. I think part of the issue that concerns us is defeating the shell game, which is a marketing issue. I think we have a lot of good news to market about what's going on in Baraboo, including our e-school and all of the things that we're planning to do. I accept the fact that, you know, until we know what the real numbers are, it's not going to make that much difference. But I certainly would like to see us begin a marketing push that focuses on the positive aspects of what's going on in the Baraboo School District, which a segment of would target the virtual e-learning that we have available. And if we need to develop some funds for that, I think that is a good direction for this board to consider.
That's a student project right now at the high school, and isn't it Anne Marie Schaefer? Hasn't she been working with the high school students? I don't know how close they are to completing that video, but she's been working with the students to create something that markets the uniqueness of the Baraboo High School. So we could certainly duplicate that process. If we need to bring that before the board and have them explain how they put it together and what that's all about. Do you know where they're at with that, Lori?
It's being projected throughout the school to classrooms currently. It has been for the last week. It's been being previewed within the school.
Oh, great.
For feedback?
And to get it out in front of the kids, there's some issues with posting it to YouTube with licensing of music that's in the background. Otherwise, I think it'd be in the public garbage.
Now, when these at-risk students leave, do you do any follow-ups with those other school districts to see how they're doing in the other school districts?
Once they leave us, they are the responsibility of the district that they are attending. What I will get is an occasional letter, depending on the program. I think some virtual programs are better at tracking these students in terms of attendance and staying on track with their curriculum than others. And this last year, for the first time, I did receive, I think, 2 letters that were copied to the district, sent to individual students and their parents, indicating that their attendance within a virtual program was not at the expectation that that district has for any of their virtual school students. And so if the student's attendance did not improve, they would revoke their open enrollment status and they would be sent back to Baraboo. So last year was the first year that I had received that kind of communication from any of the schools.
So then you really don't figure out what programs they have that we could maybe correlate in our curriculum or
Sure,
something to make,
duplicate, yeah,
so we
no.
don't lose those people or not?
No.
And you know, I'm not so sure it's a matter of curriculum. I think it has more to do with the school environment, for kids not feeling like they fit in that traditional school environment. So I think we need to take a look at, you know, not necessarily curriculum, but programs that help kids feel connected.
You mean
to
like
the schools.
bullying?
Pardon?
You mean like bullying?
Yeah, you know, or programs where we have kids assigned to mentors, or, you know, some of the things that they've started at the middle school with TA, where they have students connected to adults in the building. And, you know, certainly the bullying and peer pressure and some of the issues that come up with between kids, I think, has an impact on some of those students, especially if they're different in some way.
But we even have some of that probably with some of our students are taking online. They may have had some issue in the school
Sure.
and they're taking it online here, but still getting the local support,
Mhm.
so. I believe that some of it's like what, maybe even what Peter's alluding to, is that it's many times isn't the program, I think it's the marketing that's.
Sure, it's all about the marketing.
Yeah, and it's all, and again, and Sean is right too, it is a dollar shell game. McFarland is just taking a program in Canada and out there
Oh, they're
and
not-
skimming some money off the top.
Yeah, I bet when you look at it, they're not getting rich at all. I bet it's all getting funneled right back out to buy that curriculum and that access to that curriculum.
They make some off of it, they do.
Danny, I think isn't some of this on here from Sauk Prairie, is that part of the charter school at Merrimack
Yes.
on there? So there's different things.
What opportunities do we have to reach out to homeschool students within the district? I mean, we've talked about that in the past.
Mhm.
Is that even something that's easy? Do we even know who they all are?
We do. There is a DPI maintained database for all open enrolled students. So we can certainly know who those students are, and so it would be up to us then to design what kind of questions we want to ask those families in terms of what was the factors that led up to their deciding to open enroll out or in. We have talked about doing that before. We can certainly do that.
And I think you have to go beyond just a survey. I think you have to invite people in to talk
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
see
'cause
what
that's a
needs are
personal
not
decision,
being met.
not a-
And we do have a large
Not a checkbox.
number.
Well, yeah, if you're talking about marketing, I mean, they're here. You're not marketing to any other district, they're here.
Mary knows how many tracker.
This year, we only had about 67.
Ooh, that's
Last
down.
year was
That's down.
137.
Yeah.
At least at the strategic planning meeting, we
Yeah.
had that conversation. So that's a great improvement, and I think part of what we discussed was targeting those families and inviting them to participate in the areas which they might not be able to provide at home. Our
They are.
arts programs, our sports
They
programs.
are allowed to do that.
And they do
They
do
know
that.
Right, I mean, right, but I mean encouraging even more as a way of embracing
Welcoming.
and continued, a little bit, a toe in, a foot in, et cetera.
Okay, we had a motion by Mearing, seconded by Vitro for the approval, so if there isn't any further discussion, I will entertain a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried, thank you. Brings us to personnel recommendations. In your packet of information, there was the resignation from East Kindergarten. Ms. Henderson, I would entertain a motion for the approval of that resignation.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bedro, seconded by Riley. Any discussion?
I'd like to make a comment about the letter that was written as a part of that resignation, noting how difficult a choice it was for the individual, and specifically the reference to the support that she felt from her principal, Glenn Bilstein, at East. I think that says we're doing many good things, even though, you know, people have to make decisions that are in their best interest. It's good to see that kind of a response.
She also mentions Teresa Lean and Aaron Verhagen.
Any further comments? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried and resignation is thus approved. Brings us to the approval of new hires. Number 3, I don't know if the rest of the board got the update, but it is incorrect at 50%. The current position is 66 2/3. So the request for the new hire is 66 2/3%, not the 50 that is noted. And also number 8 is a new position, so I would like to, for the rationale for that position, turn to Molly.
Thank you. I chose not to create a PowerPoint or a fancy document, but just to let you know that the elementary principals and I feel that this is in the best interest of our youngest learners coming to our school buildings. We currently have 195 kindergartners that we're expecting for next year, with 10 current kindergarten teachers. So you can do the math, that's about 19 and a half kids in the class, or 19 in some and 20 in some others. What we'd like to do is ask for this additional kindergarten position so we could do several things. First of all, prepare for the influx that we generally see over the summer, to be well prepared in communicating with families so they would know what school their children would be attending at about this time in the school year, so they could prepare for transitions and transportation. We'd also like to do our best to keep siblings together whenever possible. And we're also looking, of course, at our space needs and making modifications and supplying and organizing the room to meet those needs.
Do you have a room available?
I do. It's not currently empty, but it will be after tonight. I'm hoping.
What happens, I want to remind the board that when we add a whole section late in the summer, we have our most mobile transient population all together in one classroom. It makes for a difficult year for the kids and the teacher, because the others have been notified and generally have been assigned to different buildings. So this helps us kind of spread kids out across the district.
It also prevents us from then, as first graders, moving those kids again to another school. Because of their late arrival, they were placed in the pocket that we made an opening. So this is a proactive approach. I certainly can't guarantee what the numbers will look like come September 4th or whatever day we formally start. But I'm asking for this tonight in anticipation of the kids that will probably come, and to be well prepared.
Mr. Chairman, do you want them one at a time, or do you want it as a slate?
Yeah, I will entertain it however you would like the motion, Mr. McNevin.
I'll motion to approve the slate of candidates 1 through 8, including the change of 3 up to the 66 2/3%, as well as the new hire position of a GLW kindergarten.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McNevin, seconded by Mr. Vidro.
I think Mr. Mortimer
Mortimer.
jumped in there.
Makes no difference.
I have a question on number 3. If I recall, several weeks ago, we saw that position change percentage from the current.
This teacher will also be teaching GETO 2 sections in addition to the FACE assignments. So 50% is for the FACE, and the additional percentage would be for the other independent studies with kids.
Molly, I got a question for you.
Yes.
Every once in a while, like every other year or so, we will get a class with a bubble in it.
Mhm.
And we've approved extra teacher for that class. Does that teacher actually end up following that class through to the high school? Or?
Typically that's an elementary challenge. We have 2 scenarios. That one, the teacher will travel, which is very difficult and challenging for the teacher sometimes, because a new curriculum needs to be learned at each different grade level. Most recently, through attrition, teachers retiring, and new hires, we've been able to avoid that when it's not been a popular decision. But sometimes we do have staff members who request that because we call it looping.
Mhm.
They stick with the same children for a couple years, and that has some really powerful results as well, given the right teacher and the right mix of students.
So if you switch them around and attrition, what have you, that you basically you keep the extra teacher with the bubble class till they get up to middle school.
And then when we have a class that's not quite as large, we'll move some teachers around if, that section is not needed, which is what we've done at GLW for this coming school year 12-13 in anticipation of numbers.
Thank you.
In years past at the elementary level, sometimes there have been mixed classrooms, 3rd and 4th grade together. Is that another way of dealing with the bubble?
Most recently, we've kind of steered away from that approach, but yes, that has been something that we've done in Baraboo. That's probably not as popular. It's a little bit more challenging to try and teach all of the curriculum to the 1st graders while you're also in the same classroom teaching all of the curriculum to the 2nd graders, which is a much different thing than a multi-age classroom. But yes, that has been done in the past. It's not something that I like to support.
It's higher stakes now with the benchmarks and a lot of pressure on teachers and students to meet those.
Any further questions? Hearing none, those in favor of the approval of the new hires as motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Congratulations to all of those on the new hire list. Brings us to C, which is out of policy for adoption and revisions. I will turn to Mr. Mirren.
Okay, we've got a lot of policies tonight. I'll try to go through them as quickly as possible. The first one is board committees. Board committees number 185. The only thing that changed on there was the educational direction committee has been stricken. It is no longer a committee. And so I move to approve that policy with that only change.
Second.
Okay.
Motion by Mearing, seconded by Riley. We're waiving the full
Waiving
reading.
the full reading of it, yes.
Noting the
one change.
one change. Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the first reading of 185 board committee signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to the next, which is academic acceleration rule. Mr. Mearing?
Okay,
Policy?
I'm having some problems with my iPad here. Okay, rather than me reading at this point, Lori, could you tell us a little bit of why we're doing this policy? And then while you're doing that, I'm gonna get it ready.
Sure. Well, in the packet, what's next is school board policy 345.41, which is labeled course placement through examination. And we'd like to replace that policy with a different policy which accomplishes much the same as the acceleration of students academically. So traditionally what we've had for policy is that students could accelerate through courses by completing some kind of examination. And we'd like to replace that policy then with policy that is labeled in your packet academic acceleration. Now, I don't know if you want me to go further with that or?
No, okay, what I'll do to start off with is I want to move to approve and waive the first reading of the academic acceleration policy based upon the policy committee went through great detail on this. 345.41 and for the first reading, so based upon what's in our board packet.
So this first one will be eliminated.
Correct, the one that has handwriting on it that says.
It's the same number.
Same
It's
number,
just-
yep.
It's rewritten to accommodate the new rule too.
Correct.
Which we're not approving, but that's just for your information.
Is there a second?
I think that was seconded, wasn't it?
Was it seconded?
If not, I'll second.
Did I miss a second?
No.
Okay. Motion by Mearing,
Sorry. I thought Mo seconded.
seconded by Mr. Bedro. Any further discussion?
Yeah, just one other question and maybe just a point, Lori, about, and I think that's mainly about the rule and why, and again, I think this kind of comes back to the meeting we had in April, the one I wasn't at, where we did talk about our gifted and talented coaches. So maybe you can elaborate more of what we're really going forward with this.
Sure. Currently, you know, there are individuals and families out there who are advocating for their children to be academically accelerated in a number of courses. And what I'm finding in my year here is that as a leadership, we struggle to make the right choice for students because we don't have a protocol or a rule to follow. And the course examination has been used to a certain degree, but it doesn't look at the whole child. And what I've done is looked at some research policies that are out there. The Ohio Department of Public Instruction developed a checklist for their school districts on how do you guarantee that you look at all different types and manners of data to make a good decision for students on behalf of allowing them to go forward when their skill set shows that they're ready to. So using that research and also some work from the National Association of Gifted Children, I've drafted the policy that you see here. The policy just really specifically talks about our beliefs about not holding students back when they show that they're ready, and then the rule gives a very prescriptive step-by-step process to follow for leadership in making those decisions that would guarantee that all the stakeholders come to make that decision together, including the student when it's appropriate and parents. And with our gifted and talented coaches at each of our buildings, they will be working to guarantee that we don't have to wait for families to advocate for their students to get their services that they need, that we'll be using our data on an ongoing basis to go out to our families and say, we think your student needs more services and here's our plan to make sure that their needs are being met. So it's guaranteeing that the structures are in place so that services are delivered, whether we have a parent advocating or not, because when I look at the data of some of our students who are really high achievers, not necessarily are their parents coming to us on a daily basis asking what are we doing for their students. So in order to be equitable to all of our students, we need to make sure that those policies and structures are in place to guarantee success for all kids.
It's a service all kid.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, Lori, I see here in number 4, it says middle school students enrolled in a course at high school will not receive a high school credit or a GPA. So what is the incentive to take a high school course?
For our students that are high achievers, they would like to accelerate through those courses quicker so that when they get to high school and it does count for credit, they can get to the higher level courses. So they still will have the opportunity to gain as many credits, but it gives them a quicker access to those higher level courses that they desire to be in.
So students may be provided the opportunity to retake the course. Can they just take a test? Or do they have to take the whole course, or can they take a test to see if they have digested all this knowledge? Or do they have to take the whole semester, for example?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm following your question, Ed. So if the student took the course as a middle school student, they took a high school course and they passed it, they would go on to the next course. For example, let's say they took geometry as an 8th grader. It's a high school class. When they come up to the high school, they could go right into Algebra 2. They wouldn't have to take geometry, but they have the option to take geometry if they'd like to get that geometry credit.
But the geometry...
But they wouldn't have to, they would have to actually take the course. They wouldn't be able to test out of it if that's their choice to repeat that course.
By being able to move at the pace at which the student is prepared, when they reach their senior year, they're taking classes and receiving credits at a much higher and distinguished level for college admittance than retaking a course that they passed in 8th grade. That's part, I think, of what we're trying to create here.
And it doesn't mean because they're taking a high school course that they're necessarily walking down to the high school to take those classes. It could be something that we're providing online as well.
Do they have the choice that if it's geometry offered online, must they take it online, or do they have the choice if it fits into their schedule to walk up here?
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult because the schedules are so different, even in day 1, day 2 kinds of things, but it's not impossible. This is kind of uncharted territory for us because we really haven't had this structure in place to address this, so we're going to have to take it individual by individual.
My best answer to that question would be it's gonna be on an individual basis. If we can make it work where they are here in our walls, we prefer that. But in some cases, it might be a better fit for the student to do it online too, so we just have to make those decisions as part of our problem-solving process.
Well, and I think our e-learning opportunities here provide a basis for, with, academic oversight, to be able to support the success of that regardless of whether they're here in the library or, in the middle school.
And we are having teachers train with online learning at the middle school too, in preparation for next year.
And this fits very nicely with our gifted and talented. I mean, that's what parents have been asking for.
To the committee and to Lori, this procedure talks about the entire application, approval, and acceptance process. Is there discussion or is there a policy that talks about the support process that once they're accepted? I mean, this gets them in the front door. What are we doing after they open that door to support them to make sure they're successful once they go through all this?
That's what I see the role of our GT coaches, but also all of our teachers, and supported through the coordination through our office too, at central office. But that hasn't necessarily been formalized.
Because you've got this huge written policy
Yeah.
on just how to walk through the process of getting accepted.
Yeah.
If it's that important for the process to be articulated into a board policy, perhaps the next step should also be articulated. I mean,
Absolutely.
if we find it this critical for just the application process, it should be also for the support.
That was something we discussed too in our meeting prior, that this is just policy. The other piece that needs to come to the board for full approval yet is our gifted and talented plan. And you saw a foundation of that earlier this school year. It still needs a lot of work, and we hope to have that work completed over the summer here so that we're ready to start in the fall with that formally articulated for everyone and approved by you all.
So that would be the appropriate place, I think, Sean,
Is it
to
possible?
deal with that.
Is it possible to have somebody that's academically accelerated in one subject and not be labeled?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And not be labeled gifted and
Yes.
talented?
Yes, yep.
So we want to make sure that they don't fall through the cracks.
Absolutely. And we were very careful in the policy itself. The very last sentence says participation in the district's gifted education program is not a prerequisite for consideration for acceleration because of that very point.
But I think, Sean, again, to be listed as gifted and talented doesn't mean you're gifted and talented across the board. You could be just gifted and talented in math and maybe not in the other subjects.
Right, but if our
For
support
instance.
network is designed around
Yes.
a gifted and talented program, there's clearly a lot of individuals that aren't going to be in that program.
Right.
So we want to make sure.
And we wanna make sure their needs are
have taken
met
this
too.
huge step forward themselves, and they need, but they aren't labeled in the right program, so they're not receiving the same support.
Right.
No, we have to give them the appropriate level of education. And maybe they're at the upper end, but not quite at the gifted and talented level. They still need that support.
We're working on the foundation of that through the professional development and also through our GT coaches. And they'll be getting lots of training this summer to be able to help facilitate some of that.
Any further questions? Hearing none and having a motion and a second, I would entertain those that are in favor of the first reading of 3:45:41 and the attached rule for updating of 3:45:41 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to 4:21, Mr. Miriam.
Okay, and I've got my iPad working again. Okay, 421, which is the entrance age early admission. I moved to waive the first reading and note in the policy the bolded portions, which are the new additions, and one section that is stricken out based upon a previous year. And I move to approve that as written and waiving the first reading. The policy committee has fully reviewed this.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Miriam, seconded by Mr. McNevin. Any further discussion?
While we got our director of elementary, could you tell us why we have this policy?
Why we have this policy?
I know why we have it, but I want you to tell us.
Well, I would presume the safest or most eloquent answer would be to keep us well prepared and make sure that when questions arise, we're acting and operating in a prudent manner and treating everyone equitably. The question comes up every year. So with a policy like this, we're well prepared to address those questions.
Have we had many issues with our 4K program and, you know, questions and obviously saying this child should be in it or shouldn't be in it?
A fair number, yes, considering our program is 4 years old.
Yeah.
Yes. We have parents who are unsure of the cutoff date and why there is one. We have parents who think their child might be exceptional and be ready for something even when they don't meet the age, whether it's 4K or 5K. So all of the scenarios are out there. Newcomers to the United States are operating under a different educational system, so that sometimes falls into place. So probably every scenario you could dream up, we've had presented to us.
I think the main thrust of this policy change, though, is the special ed component.
Yeah.
You know, inclusion, so.
Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of 421 entrance age as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion in first reading carried. Mr. Meering, 433.
Okay, I think this kind of goes along the same lines. This is a brand new policy, assignment of students to school. And for 433, and I move to waive the first reading and move to approve it based upon the full review of the policy committee.
Second.
Okay. This is again the same thing where parents are making requests, so we've done things in the past, but we really didn't have necessarily a policy to support those.
It just outlines it so it's a little more clear with some dates and deadlines, so we can be proactive in placing our kids, yes.
Yeah, it's just more procedural so that people say, this is what we're doing. And so
Exactly.
they don't.
Question where number 3, where it says parents will be required to provide transportation for approved requests. If the child's already in their assigned school receiving transportation, does that not allow them an opportunity for transportation to the requested school?
Generally not. If, for example, you live on Berkeley Boulevard by Gordon L. Wilson, and the school that the parent would prefer the child attend is North Freedom, we may or may not have busing, so we don't provide any busing
understood.
when it's a parental request that's been approved.
Okay.
And
But
even
you're-
if they're a rural student on the other side of town and now they wanna come to GLW, we don't provide, we don't open up that can of worms. And most parents, if they feel strongly enough about it, they're prepared to provide the transportation.
Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none, those in favor of 433, assignment of students to schools for the first reading, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried, and Mr. Meering brings us to 454.
Okay, 454, child abuse and neglect reporting. And I move to waive the first reading of this based upon the full review of the policy committee. Note the following bolded changes, and that we approve it as it is written and presented in the board packet.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Motion by Meering, seconded by McNevin. Any discussion?
Danny, I know some of this is probably due to state statutes, but could you explain why we have these changes?
Absolutely, it's very much related to state statute, with the new law that was passed. It very explicitly states now that, any staff member, regardless of their position within a district, they are required to have this training by DPI. And if they have reason to suspect that a student has been subject to abuse or neglect, that they now are legally required to report that to the appropriate officials.
Weren't they legally required to do that before?
It was a little gray previously. There was, the law specified specific groups of employees that were mandatory reporters, for example, teachers, counselors, nurses, school psychologists. So this covers those personnel that were not explicitly stated in the law previously. So for example, school secretaries, custodial staff, school lunch personnel. So
School board members.
School board members, exactly.
And I think that I wanted to make a note that training then, within the first 6 months, is applicable to school board members as well.
Absolutely.
Any further questions? Thank you for the rationale.
Were you reading the last paragraph? Which one is it here?
Must participate within the first 6 months, training within the first 6 months after commencing. Of course, you all have been here longer
Danny can
than
send the link out again to the board if you'd like, because you can do it online.
Yep, it's an online.
See, that
training.
says a school district employee. We aren't school district employees, are we?
But you do receive a W-2 from the district for tax purposes.
And that's what the statute states, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not saying, well,
Exactly.
gosh, you know,
Yeah.
school board members are gonna get
I
exemption.
see.
We receive a W-2, that's it.
That's how they define a school employee.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we work for our money, is that okay?
Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of 454 for the first reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. 461 and the rule for 461, Mr. Mearing.
Okay, I move to approve 461 student scholarship and senior awards. And I approve it, the policy committee has fully reviewed the policy and approve it with all noted changes and strikeouts in the board pack.
Second.
Motion by Nearing, seconded by Beadle. Any discussion?
Lori, you can fill in for Bill. and
Sure.
Explain a little bit what this is about, so.
Sure, and I just wanted to note that there's really two pieces to the policy. One that is for the graduating class of 2013, and then starting with the graduating class of 2014, in conjunction with the Law Day process, the recognition process that the high school is moving forward with, would be used to determine how we select our student that would be noted for Wisconsin Academic Excellence Scholarship. We would be using, as a district, we're allowed to determine what our grade point average calculation will be. And what we'd like to use moving forward with that class of 2014 is the Law Day recognition process, where we look at the number of advanced courses they've taken multiplied by their GPA to determine which student would rise to the top. And we believe that will give us the student that's truly taken the most rigorous path through our high school and accomplish the highest level of success with our classes.
This also provides opportunity to honor many students.
Correct.
Which
So
is
instead
what
of
we're
having
here to
one
do.
valedictorian, we could have 20 students that are celebrated together at reaching that highest level of accomplishment.
And we have earlier approved the Lottie system to be implemented.
And if any of you saw the State Journal last week when they had the lineup of all the graduations in the area, they had that included in their information, and many of them stated, we do not recognize a valedictorian and salutatorian. I think Bill is planning on sharing additional information on that at the next meeting.
Percentages we're getting to be closer to over 50% at this point, so. that are going down.
That would be true nationwide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any further questions? Hearing none, those in favor of 461 and 461's attached rule, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. And the last out of policy, Mr. Mearing, 671.1.
671.1, payroll processes. I move to approve it as written in the board packet, including all bolded and striked out provisions that the policy committee has fully reviewed and approved previously.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Miriam, seconded by Riley. Any discussion on payroll processes?
Doug, a few years back, we were talking about this as far as our bookkeeping and does this fit in with our schedule and does this help minimize the workload during the summer like we planned at that one time?
Workload as far as what?
Getting the checks out and, I mean, is this,
Well, this is really in response to statutory changes again.
Okay.
We're required to pay people within 30 days of the work that they've performed. The board has chosen to allow options to teachers and administrators and year-round secretaries, or not year-round, but, no, not secretaries, just administrators and teachers, of how they want to be paid. We handled it on the contracts with teachers. There's a separate form for administrators. So we're really responding to statutes here. So if somebody chooses to be paid over 12 months and they only work 12 months, it does create more, I mean, there are more payrolls, more people on those payrolls.
at one time there was like, we were trying to get the checks out actually beforehand in the first part of the summer so that the business department, whatever, would have some time in there where they wouldn't have to be going through the payroll for a period of time where they'd have their, you know.
It defaults to that if an employee doesn't choose 12 months. It's pretty difficult for new teachers just entering the field to be paid over 10 months. It's really in their best interest if they stretch those payrolls out over the course of a year for budgeting purposes, but,
Okay.
you know, we'll see how it works.
I see,
I
but I
mean,
mean,
Too much month at the end of the month.
Yeah.
We determined there was
Been
kind
there.
of savings as far as the
That's what
payroll
credit cards
part
are
of it.
for.
Yeah, we discussed it with the personnel
Okay.
committee, and they chose to allow staff to elect either option.
Okay.
We still, you know, we still have year-round employees, so we still have to run
Right.
that during the summer.
And we even found that when we went through it, that we had a couple that we were missing.
Yes.
That we had to make some revisions to the
Yep.
policy to accommodate that. And, you know, it's just like any of our policies, if it gets out there and somebody say, hey, what about me, you know, I got a problem here, you know, then we'll have to accommodate those changes.
This is also reflected in the employee handbook.
Yeah.
Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of 671.1 payroll process for the first reading signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Entertain motion to go into executive closed session.
Move to go into executive closed session for all the stuff that's within our.
Roll.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. We are now reconvened in open session, and we have two actionable items from the closed session. The first is the associate principal position at the high school. Would entertain a motion for the approval of Clint Brickle.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Vidro, seconded by Riley. Any discussion?
I had the opportunity to participate in the process. It was a very rigorous process, and it was wonderful to see Clint again. And I think we've made a very wise choice in ensuring that he will be a member of the District of Baraboo academic and administrative staff.
Thanks, Peter. And Mo was also on that.
I was there as well, and I think he will be a great fit. He's returning to the Baraboo School District.
Further questions, comments? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Congratulations to Mr. Brickle. And that brings us to the Director of Business Services. I would entertain a motion that we offer a contract to Martha Baldwin.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by McNevin, seconded by Cummings. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Welcome to Ms. Baldwin to the Baraboo School District. She will start in July. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Thank
Set
you.
it up.
Next regular scheduled board meeting is on the 11th.
What is this?